Welcome, everybody, to Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, the author of Writing That Gets Noticed, Find Your Voice, Become a Better Storyteller, Get Published, which was named by Poets and Writers a best book for writers. Every week, I speak with novelists, with authors, with writers of every niche to talk about their tips, their tricks, their strategies, and how the sauce is made, including creative advice. I'll talk about essays and articles and share my own experience from 3 decades of publishing. So join me every week and grow your business and build your craft with Freelance Writing Direct. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. And follow along on Substack, where I share special clips for subscribers only at estelleserasmus.substack.com. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, and today I am so delighted to have Wade Rouse with us and also Gary Edwards. So let me start with Wade. And Wade has been a guest on the program before. He is the USA Today and internationally best-selling author of 5 memoirs and 12 novels. His novels, written under the pseudonym Viola Shipman, which he uses to honor his late grandmother, have been selected on must-reads by NBC's Today Show, as well as Michigan Notable Books of the Year. Wade lives in Michigan and California and hosts Wine and Words with Wade, a literary happy hour on Facebook every Thursday. And I was delighted to be a guest of January of this year on the program. And welcome, Wade. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to see you. As I said, we called and we matched.
I know. I love that.
We know our colors.
Yes. And with you is your husband and so much more, Gary Edwards. And I'm going to throw it to you, Gary, to describe what you do.
I'm going to catch the ball and chat. Yeah. Well, first of all, it was so nice meeting you was it 2 years back now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I came on because I love you and I wanted to be part of the conversation. But publishing, as you know, is a lot of work. And Wade, at one point, I think about 15 years ago, you've been doing this about 20, said, I need to hire somebody to help me with all the behind the scenes things. I quit my sales rep job and started helping Wade full time with social media, book tours, anything that he needed so he had time to write. So I'm his husband, but I also call myself his Kim Kardashian stage mom.
I love it.
He says I'm meaner than Kim Kardashian and pushier.
A little rougher.
Which, hey, I got to get the job done.
But your book, what you've got right beside you, how do you get writing that gets noticed? And that's by having a team of people surrounding you that not only are good at what they do, but also believe in what you're doing and your vision. And that's what he's provided. And so many authors that we know, we had Susan Mallory on our book club last night, and she's had her assistant for 18 years.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of authors that have not only that beta reader, that agent that they've been with forever, but they also have that person that knows how to get their story out there in the best possible way.
Because we have the Wine, Words, and Wade podcast that we share on the Viola Shipman Facebook page every Thursday. So I help coordinate author friends and different talks with that. And then we launched this year a book club where we meet and we have 2 books a month. We bring authors in, then we have in-depth conversations at the end. And Wade, myself, and our friend Kat help monitor that and run that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you are so focused on community, because that is a theme of this fantastic novel, Under Your Own Name. That's what friends are for. I told you this before, but I have to share. I'm kind of jaded when it comes to reading books, and I've loved all your books, and you've been a guest on the program before, but this one not only made me laugh, it made me cry. And I very, very rarely cry with books. I feel sometimes that I'm being manipulated to cry, which I did not feel that. It was purely natural. And so I wanted to share that because I think having that emotional experience is such a big part of what this book is about and what you bring to people on it. So let's start from the very beginning and tell me the genesis of this. And I know you have a note to the readers at the end. Can you tell me of what made you decide to, first of all, come out as yourself and not your grandmother's name and write it?
I will try to keep this as short as possible because there's many answers to your question. Yeah, one is, as I write to readers in a personal letter on the back of the book, and this gives nothing away. I grew up gay in the Missouri Ozarks, had no idea in the 70s how to come out. I mean, there was no vocabulary for doing that. And had a mother and grandmother that truly loved me unconditionally. And I had an older brother that I lost when he had graduated high school and I was just entering high school. And I thought my brother would give my family everything they wanted, a wife and grandchildren. And when he passed away, I really kind of not only buried him, I buried myself. And I went away to college and stayed in touch. Folks remember the early 80s. We wrote letters. We talked on a rotary phone to one another or a payphone. And I remember hearing a lot of people in college, my sorority sisters and friends, talking about a new show called The Golden Girls. And I asked my mom and grandma if they were watching it, and they were, like much of the rest of America. And I started watching it on Saturday nights before fraternity parties started by snaking the cord or the phone into my room. And it was a way, after a horrible tragedy, for us to connect and stay in touch with one another. But as people who remember the show, it not only made you laugh, it actually broached huge topics at the time, including being gay, coming out, and eventually bridged kind of a way for me to talk to my mother and grandmother. It also let me see them as women of a certain age that before I'd only seen as my mom and my grandmother. So the show was incredibly instrumental. I always had this idea of wanting to write a book like this, but I never knew what to do with it until COVID. And like so many Americans, we started rewatching The Golden Girls. And, I'd seen an episode where one of the characters I fictionalized in the book, named Coco, he was actually one of the lead characters in the pilot of The Golden Girls who actually gets axed. Sophia became popular. He didn't test well, but he was openly gay on the show. And I ask, as I do in the book, if folks were ready for a character like that. So all of these ideas kind of coalesced, and we're at a time in our country where so many of the rights that we have, that women had, are quickly eroding. And I had this idea just kind of sitting there, and I pulled it together. I just signed a 3-book contract for 3 more Viola Shipman novels. And I was pitching those. And at the very last minute, before I sent in the first book of that new contract, I tacked this one on. And my agent and my editor truly got back to me within 48 hours and said, this is the book that you have to write. You've written so many books, beautiful books that have honored your family and your grandmother. This honors you. And we think it should come out under your own name. So it was nothing that I had planned. We plan so much as authors. This was totally unplanned. And I do believe that sometimes if you believe in something and it calls to you and you're scared, it's the perfect moment for that story.
I love that. Find even with the fear, work through the fear, and sometimes the fear is what drives you on. So this was your second coming out.
Yeah, it really was. There was a lot of, publishing, there was a lot of trepidation about, oh my gosh, this is a Wade Rouse novel. It's a pivot. Foundation, I think the book still covers many of the same themes I love to write about. family and strong characters of a certain age, but it's totally different. I've been blown away by the response.
And Gary, when you heard from Wade that he was coming out with a book under his own name, what did that feel like for you?
I actually, because he had done memoirs and I'm in the memoirs, so I was totally comfortable with that, obviously. But I actually kind of freaked out because, from a brand image and writing, we had Viola Shipman books, we have Viola Shipman retail products, we have the Wine Words and Wade on the Viola Shipman Facebook page. And I'm like, what are you doing right now? And
Yeah.
it really stuck with me because Wade's answer was so important to him as an artist. He said, writing is art. And I feel like I'm so called to do this right now. Because from a marketing standpoint, for me, I'm like, the train's going this way. And all of a sudden, we're going to go in a different direction. And he'll obviously still have Viola Shipman novels and be called to do that. But it really made me realize how, like, if you're an oil painter and all of a sudden you think, I want to work in pastels or watercolors, or I feel called to do something different. And it really resonated how important this book was to him to be able to tell the story. So he's 100% in, obviously, because of that.
So is there going to be new product?
Already, we have T-shirts, we have phone cases, we have everything all on the website.
And I have to say, out of all of meetings with publishers and editors and marketing and sales, readers are readers. And readers simply want the best story an author can tell. They see through BS. They just want a good story. They want to walk in someone else's shoes. They want a new perspective on the world. And that's the one thing I've learned.
Can you give just a nutshell synopsis of the story? Because there's so many characters.
Yeah. Yeah, it follows four gay men over the age of 60 who live communally in Palm Springs, like the Golden Girls, which inspired the story. And each of them has come to the desert for a very personal reason, really seeking a new life and a new chapter of what they've been through in their lives, much of what we've experienced in our own lives. And in their golden years, it's supposed to be kind of happy retirement, never ending martini hour. They perform a show that brings episodes of the classic sitcom The Golden Girls to life to new audiences in Palm Springs. This is a troupe known as the Golden Gays. And everything is going well, but each is harboring a secret that they don't want to burden the other with. And Teddy, one of the main characters, kind of the Dorothy character in the novel, his estranged sister shows up on their doorstep unannounced with her granddaughter in tow, and everything kind of unravels from there. It's a story about found family and really learning to love yourself no matter the age, finally. And each of the characters represents not only one of the Golden Girls, but a piece of our lives and our friends' lives.
So I have to ask you this. Is there a character in there that you identify most with? I'm going to ask you the same question, Gary.
I always say the Golden Girls, interestingly, were kind of pre-Sex in the City. It's one of those shows where when you watched it, you identified with one character very much, probably more so than the other. And for me, I'm probably a mix. I'm a big Teddy Dorothy in the book. And the fact that humor's been kind of my MO, the way that I connect with people and the way I kind of keep people at bay sometimes. And just the childhood you have where you grow up in an era and in rural America that is not accepting of who you are. So your instinct is to run and to escape. But it's interesting, Gary said in reading the book, and others have said this too, I got a little bit of Barry in me too. He's the Coco character, which is the fact that you work so hard to achieve a dream. You work so hard and you never give up on that, no matter how hard things get in publishing or the arts, acting, theater, whatever it is, you never give up on that because it's a piece of you. So I'm probably a combo.
I love that. How about you, Gary?
30 years ago, I was 1000% Blanche.
Okay. Okay. So Blanche in the book is Barry, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And so I would say both Blanche on the show and the character. And that was pre-Wade. And now I would say I'm pretty much a solid Ron. I'm like the caretaker,
Rose.
nurturer, the big Rose. Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
You know who I really liked? I really liked Sid.
That's everybody's favorite, I think.
So, it's interesting. He was the hardest character for me to write, especially in the beginning, and turned out to be my favorite character. And I think most readers' favorite character. And I have to say, his late in life love story is the one that,
That's what it is. The vulnerability with Leo made me feel for him.
and we have so many friends like that too that have been married and have children and have grandchildren, but have never been in a relationship and have never truly seen themselves as beautiful and desirable. And it's heartbreaking for us to witness. And I wanted to write a character that actually you can be 80, but oh my gosh, to be seen for the first time, it's first love at 80, which is beautiful. And I love that he finds his strength. And Estelle, his wing woman, is one of my favorite characters too. They're a good dynamic duo together.
Yes, that's the wing woman. I love them.
And currently, I am fixing a 73-year-old single friend up with somebody that we met at a furniture store. And I just winged it and I said, you have to meet our friend John. And I just started talking to them. And right now, there's Facebook correspondence going on. So it's never too late.
Yeah.
And it's funny, that book. And then our friend John goes, oh my gosh, this is unfolding just like Wade's book. So
Yeah,
Life follows art.
it does.
Very cool. So to get a little nitty gritty, you wrote so many characters. How did you do that? What is the structure of doing that?
I think one of the difficulties was this, as I was talking with my editor especially, was I did not want to make the characters caricatures of the Golden Girls, because so many people know and love the show. They know the characters inside and out. They've seen every episode. But what I wanted to do was take the internal traits of those characters that made them who they were. Dorothy's sarcasm to mask her vulnerability. Despite what the world throws at Rose, her innate sweetness that refuses to see anything but the beauty. Blanche, knowing she's aging, knowing that all of this is kind of fading, but refusing to give in to that. I wanted to take each of those traits and put them in a completely different character, a gay man over the age of 60, who's kind of been through so many struggles in their lives. And I did huge character sketches. I really, before I even sat down to write a word of this book, I had them fleshed out. I knew the stories that I am not a plotter typically, but I really set out to know exactly what these characters were going to do at every step of the way, and to make them distinct, because I know as a reader and I know as an author, throwing a lot of characters at readers sometimes, because we're so used to being based on one or two, is a big ask. And they have to buy into each of those characters for this book to work. So I did a lot of background lifting before I even sat down to do anything.
And you get up at 5:30, is that correct?
5:30, I got up this morning and started going, yes, on my next book, yeah.
And then Gary, when he's doing his writing, that's the sacrosanct time. That's like it's a religious thing. So what are you doing? Are you just keeping everything in bay for him while he's doing that, or?
Sort of. So I think all of our friends know not to bother him, and
Sure.
that he's writing, and especially like from like 6 in the morning till like 1, because that's usually then you take a break. But I always think, well, that doesn't apply to me. We were talking to our friend Susan Mallory, another author, last night, and I said, does your husband just interrupt you when you're writing to say, hey, what are we going to do for dinner? Or I'm going to go take the car in for an oil change or whatever. And she goes, oh my God, absolutely not. And I thought, oh, I do interrupt him. And it's just dawned on me. It's taken me 20 years of him writing to realize I probably shouldn't. But usually in the morning, I will go to yoga or I'm in another room with the laptop working on my computer and doing emails to readers and helping set up a book tour or whatever. So I do try to, but I often do think that if it's important and I need to talk because I'm a talker, I do interrupt them.
We're highly verbal in completely different ways. But it's funny, last night, Susan Mallory said something I know stuck with you. She goes, an author really only has, depending what, it doesn't matter if you write at 5 in the morning or midnight, evening, whatever it is, during the day, an author only has a few entry points into that story. With everything going on in the world, we have few entry points in which we are fully engaged with what we're writing, where we are lost, we are gone from this world, and we were there. And if you move in and out of that space too many times, kind of over for you for the day. And I thought that was a great analogy on kind of how you authors stay focused.
Yeah, that's a great segue into my next question, which is a little heavier. There is a stronger feeling here of mortality than I've ever, and I've read a lot of your books, than I've ever seen before. And I know it's the age of all the people in the book, but was that weighing on you more as you wrote this book?
Yeah, I turned 60. So I think those things start to, when I was writing the book.
He keeps saying I turned 60, but I'm like, okay, you're 61.
When I was writing the book. And those things, I think those start to weigh on us, and I had lost both my parents. Gary's mother and father passed away in 20 and 23. And as with these characters, we're the next in line, if you want to be brutally honest. And I think it's mortality combined with the fact that sometimes we have to realize that we are blessed to be alive. And we take that for granted every single day. I had the launch event for That's What Friends Are For was in Palm Springs, where it's set with Stephen Rowley, an author who wrote The Guncle. And he asked me a great question. He said, did you think you would be alive at your age when you were younger? Did you think you would be alive right now? Kind of similar to your question. And I got very emotional and I said, I did not. Each of us at one point in our lives tried to take our own life. We went through an AIDS epidemic. We've seen friends die. I did not know if I would be 60. And so in writing this book, you're right. It weighed on me in the fact that to be here is a blessing. And we're so focused on social media with youth. We're always going to be in this society. But there is a gift, as I write at the end of the book, to age. That's what I want to remind readers of.
And I felt that very strongly because you humanize them so much. We see who they were in their youth. We see who they want to be, their fears, their vulnerabilities, and their sweetness. I mean, I think all your characters have a sweetness, which really appeals to me as well, even if they have issues. I mean, they all have secrets, they all have issues. Some of them have darker pasts than the others, but I think that's you that comes through, that belief and sweetness. I do feel that.
I do think the majority of us are good people inside, and we try to achieve that every day. And life and the world can just beat that out of us. And it's hard to cling to that sometimes, but you're much more of an optimist than I am, but I'm a firm believer in the good in people. And that, again, I say this in every book, there's more that unites us then disconnects us. I do believe that, but we lose that every moment.
That's interesting. So you're more of an optimist than Wade. So did you influence him when you got together?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because writing, for instance, he always wanted to write, and he had some very interesting jobs, like when we lived in St. Louis, Missouri, when we first met. But he always wanted to write, and I finally said one day, well, why don't you just write a book? Like, he didn't give himself the permission at the time
Yeah.
to creatively say, I can do this. And I think I've always been more optimistic and with that. I think I've influenced you, but
I know why, because he was in corporate America. He was an artist among the suits, and that would drive you crazy. And you studied as a journalist, and you were using your journalism in this business way, not the art way. So you gave him the permission. That's beautiful.
yeah, I don't think he thought, can I do this? And I did interior landscape design. So I was very creative and did a lot of really cool things. And I kept looking at him. I'm like, you're a creative. But here he is in this 9 to 5. But you also, I think, like you talk about in this book too, you thought you were doing what, before you started writing, what you thought you were supposed
Correct.
to do,
Yeah. I mean,
what your dad wanted you to do, and what you thought you were
it's
supposed
hard
to
to
do.
give up a salary. It's hard to give up retirement benefits. It's hard to give up health insurance. That's the net that we need. Those are the hard things to give up and do on your own. I think a great book that someone needs to write is, talking about not just writing and the art of writing, but the business of writing too. I mean, that's a huge curve for especially new authors in the business. How you survive for 20 years doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely, and it's always shifting.
I teach writing workshops, and there will be people then, just like I was, have wonderful careers, and they'll be like, I'm writing, for trade journals, or I'm writing business writing or marketing reports or stock summaries. I'm not a writer. And I'm like, you are writing. You're actually writing a difficult subject and making it consumable for others. That's hard writing, and it will transfer.
I just tell them one thing. I say, whatever you do, when I first started, I wrote brochures, I wrote anything. I said, but try to get your byline. Because that's you. If you can get a byline, I remember I did a column for First for Women after I was at Woman's World and left Woman's World, and I was the fitness columnist for First for Women. And that was a sister publication. It's still publishing today. And they did not give bylines, and I fought to get my name like on the side, like you had to turn your head, but there it was, column by my name. So I fought for that, and I tell my students to fight for it.
It's true. It is so true.
Yeah, and listicles won't give you that. They're the worst. Anyway, AI is doing all the listicles these days. But I want to get back to that's what friends are for. Gary, were you an early reader?
Yes, but parts of it. So Wade, the only book I ever read before it went out was his very first book, America's Boy. Wade will share parts of a book as he's writing with me, and then he will share it with his agent, but he will not share the whole book until it goes off to the editor. And it's you're kind of, I think you're so in your head, you do not want any outside influence, negative or positive, to jump in. I think you are in it.
I always read things aloud to him. He's very honest. It's what we need. It can be hard to hear, but if something's not working, or a character's not right, or the voice is off, or I think it's funny and he doesn't, or I'm crying but he's not, whatever it is, that's an early test for me. And I always send early chapters to my agent, which I'm going to do this week, and my editor. They will give me early feedback on kind of directionally what they think is going on. Then I shut down. I trust, and then I have to trust myself, because I'll start to feel too questionable about what people are saying rather than following my gut. And I don't want that many voices in my head.
That makes sense. So there's something I noticed in this book that I've always been told something that you kind of went and you broke, I don't know, a rule that I thought I had heard, which was don't put pop culture references in books. First of all, the topic, the idea of the book, and you have songs and you have Chapel Roan and you just have so many pop culture references. Can you address what I'm telling you that somebody had told me? Thinking of writing class, maybe. I don't know.
I've had this discussion for 20 years. My first memoir came out 20 years ago this year, America's Boy, about growing up gay in the Missouri Ozarks, and just recently got republished, was filled with pop culture references. And I remember editors that were reading it in the beginning were like, God, there's so many. I mean, it was truly, when I got the copy edits back from Dutton at the end, it was of the brand names. It was like 4 single space pages. And here's what folks think. There are readers of all ages. Some readers are going to get those references. Some readers they're going to be a complete whiff with other readers. They're not going to know what the hell you're talking about. I do it intentionally because no matter the age of the reader, I think you're going to hit one where all of a sudden they are dropped into that place. You say Pop-Tart, or you say the Carpenters, you are taken to, or Chapel Roan, you are taken to a very specific moment and place in your mind and time and memory bank that aligns with, I can write 1,000 more words, but I think you're instantly there. I've always used that. It's a little bit like humor. Pop culture references are like humor. I have so many, I've had editors say, cut the humor back. It's not working. Some readers won't get this. And I'm like, they're not the readers for this then. Because the hardest thing with That's What Friends Are For was there's so many one-liners. It's like a sitcom. I mean, I wanted to write it or stand-up act that a lot of the humor missed in the beginning because there was just too much. And my editor wisely said, this has to be pared back because the humor comes from the soul of each character. It's not just to make someone laugh, it has to mean something. And so that's exactly right. So a lot of jokes were and a lot of pop culture references were left on the floor, but enough.
Oh, you have a lot.
People have a lot, and I had more.
Barbie, Barbies, and there's just so much. And all the songs, I loved all the beginnings with the song, the Burt Bacharach song. And I know all those songs.
I have a very different, yes, I do my own take sometimes on them, but sometimes I'm like, the advice is just follow what you think is working.
Thank you, because that I'm taking to the bank.
Not to belabor it, but I teach this in my writing classes too. Like, I was a huge Tom Wolfe fan in the 80s. And I remember reading Bonfire of the Vanities, and truly in the middle of the beginning of the book, throughout the book, the way he writes about New York City and the trash trucks, he'll devote paragraphs to the sound that the trash truck makes at 3 a.m. It was so jarring to me as a reader, younger reader, that I was like, who does that? And then I remember thinking, why can't you do that? Because it works. It's working.
It's such a journey reading this book because you just care about the characters, you want what's best for them, and it really is fulfilling how it ends. And it just pulls at your heartstrings, but also feels very real and very grounded in the world today, particularly in some of the situations that the characters are dealing with, prejudice. And I love that you put in Jewish characters, that you put in anti-Semitism. I think that's so important, and I deeply appreciate that you put that in there.
Thank you. Each character's love is hard-earned, I believe, which is like what we all go through in life.
Yeah. Do you feel your love was hard-earned? I have to ask.
I feel like it was fate.
Yes, 100%.
I do. I feel like it was fate. I actually fell in love probably first. There was a time when I said, he was like, "You're just out. You don't know what, you haven't dated a lot." I said, "I know what love is and I love you." And
Yeah, 30 years ago on July 27th. And he said, "You don't know what we've already started." Because I thought, oh my gosh, you're just out. You haven't told all your friends or family yet. This is not gonna, you have to go be wild, go be like, you have to go do you.
what my mother said from the Ozarks said. She said, it's easy for so many folks that grew up when I did in the 70s and 80s. We had our proms and our first kisses, and we rode bikes together, and we went to concerts and the mall, and you didn't have any of that. So to search and look and find, when you found the right person, you knew it. It just didn't come simply. So I think in that regard, it was hard.
You have your share, as we would say.
Yeah. I actually think I think so many of us are at 60 of our friends are really coming into their own, because in so many ways we don't really give a crap what people think anymore. We're not caught up in that court of public opinion anymore. We're very grounded in who we are and comfortable, and our love and our family and our friends and what we're doing and what we've achieved. It's glorious. It's pretty glorious.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Let's end on that note. Thank you so much, Wade and Gary. That's what friends are for. Pick it up, everyone. It's a great book. Follow me at estelleserasmus.com on my website and on social media, which is Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Estelle S. Erasmus. And we're now on YouTube for Freelance Writing Direct. Follow along, and soon everyone will be reading what you're writing.